Hello guys, welcome to Global Happenings. Today we have a trending news here for you. And the headline of the news reads, Buhari's minister and CBN in trouble as Nigerians demand accountability. But before we go on with details of the news and further analysis, we'd like to encourage you to please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the red subscribe button and also on the bell icon so as to get notification anytime we publish videos on YouTube. Alright, let's look at the news in detail. The Socio-Economic Right and Accountability Project (SERAP) has asked the federal government and Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) to provide spending details of public fund and private sector donation to provide socio-economic benefits to the country's poorest and most vulnerable people, including details of beneficiaries of any cash payment, cash transfers, food distribution, and other benefits during the lockdown in Abuja, Lagos, and Ogun State because of COVID-19. SERAP also asked the federal government and CBN to disclose information on the details of the implementation of the school feeding program during the lockdown and closure of schools in several states where the program is being implemented, including the number of children that have so far benefited from the program and the names of the communities since the lockdown and closure of schools, as well as the number of cooks engaged. Into Freedom of Information FOI request sent to Ms.sadiya Umar Farouk, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, and Mr. Godwin Emefiele, CBN Governor, SERAP said, "We are seriously concerned that millions of the country's poorest and most vulnerable people have not benefited from the announced palliatives, donations, reported cash payments, cash transfers, and other benefits." SERAP went further to say, providing socio-economic benefits to the country's poorest, especially at this time of COVID-19 crisis, is a matter of human rights, not charity. It is also implicit in Nigeria's right to freely use their natural wealth and resources, which ought to be spent for the public good. Ensuring that relief funds and donations are used to provide much-needed benefits to beneficiaries is critical to keeping people alive and addressing vulnerabilities and inequalities in the country. In the FOI request dated 4th April 2020 and signed by SERAP Deputy Director Tr0uble Oluwadare, the organization said, and I quote, "Providing the information will help to address the concern by many Nigerians regarding allegation of corruption and politicization in the distribution of benefits, improve public trust, and enhance the integrity of the entire process and modes of distribution of relief benefits to these Nigerians." The FOI request read in part, and I quote, it said, "Rather than making physical cash payment to the country's poorest and most vulnerable people, we urge you to begin electronic cash transfers to all beneficiaries through individuals' bank verification number (BVNs) already available through the bank. This would be cost-effective at this time of crisis, provide immediate and significant benefit, as well as give individuals and families the freedom to spend the money on goods and services that best meet their particular needs. If we have not heard from you within 7 days of the receipt and or publication of the FOI request, the registered trustee of SERAP shall take up appropriate legal actions under the Freedom of Information Act to compel you to comply with our request. Nigerian authorities are locking down states without adequately making provision for the access of the country's poorest and most vulnerable people to basic necessities of life like food, healthcare, and other basic needs during the duration of the lockdown, and to address the corrosive impact of COVID-19 on these Nigerians. Rather than sending relief materials to the country's poorest and most vulnerable people, which may be diverted and in any case may not be what certain individuals and families may need, we urge you to focus more on urgently making electronic cash transfers to these Nigerians to determine by themselves how they wish to spend the money to meet their peculiar individuals and family needs. Providing direct regular and unconditional electronic cash transfers to the country's poorest and the most vulnerable people, including workers and pensioners that have not been paid for months, is the best to stop the spread of COVID-19 in the country and to save millions of Nigerians' lives. The power to spend cash helps preserve a person's basic human dignity. We urge you to refer to the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) and Economic and Financial Crime Commission (EFCC) for prompt, thorough, and transparent investigation of allegation of corruption in the distribution of relief funds and donation for COVID-19 and the politicization of the process for the distribution funds, as well as to urge the anti-corruption bodies to effectively prosecute any credible case of corruption. We are concerned that some 80 million of the country's poorest and most vulnerable people will be negatively affected by the lockdown and stay-at-home order without effective, transparent, and direct socio-economic interventions funds, food, standard health care services, clean water, and other reliefs by the authority. We request you to provide us with copies of the National Social Investment Program (NSIP) and the Social National Registers and the list of beneficiaries under these registers that have so far benefited from any palliatives, donation, cash payments to transfers, and other benefits during the lockdown. According to our information, following the announcement by President Muhammadu Buhari of lockdown in Lagos and Ogun State and Abuja to reduce the spread of COVID-19 pandemic in the country, the federal government reportedly stated disbursing 20,000 naira conditional cash transfers to each of the country's poorest and most vulnerable people at the Gwali Area Council of Abuja. According to report, over 11 million of the country's poorest and most vulnerable people have been identified in 38 states to benefit from the federal government cash transfer and other palliative and reliefs. We urge you to publish weekly spending details on COVID-19 relief funds and donations and the list of all beneficiaries. SERAP also urged the federal government and the CBN to provide details of the number and list of all beneficiaries, including people living with disabilities (PWDs) who have so far benefited from the relief funds, donation in the form of palliatives, cash payments, cash transfer, and other benefits in Abuja, Lagos, and Ogun State and other states because of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as detail of what the authorities are doing to make these benefits available to the country's poorest and at an equitable basis. Details on mode of distribution of fund, donation including the total amount of food item, cash payment, cash transfers, and other benefits that have so far been made. Details of the total amount from the proposed 500 billion naira COVID-19 intervention fund that would be spent to provide direct electronic cash transfer and other direct benefits to the country's poorest and most vulnerable people, as well as the number of such people planned to be reached in the next 6 months. Details of the total amount of donations from the private sector being coordinated by the Central Bank of Nigeria that have so far been received by the authorities and the list of donors that have not yet redeemed their pledge. Number of trucks deployed to convey food and other relief material to the country's poorest and most vulnerable people, and the total number of states that have so far benefited from such material. Details of any plan to provide social and economic benefits to the over 80 million of the country's poorest and the most vulnerable people beyond the 11 million targeted by the federal government across 35 states, as well as details of what the CBN is doing to use the donation to provide direct socio-economic benefit to the country's poorest and most vulnerable people on an equitable basis and with geographical spread. Wow, that was a long read, and would I say they don't end up again? No, not. I won't want to say that, but this is a good demand. One of the things that is really bothering the heart of many people is the fact that there is no accountability and transparency in the in this present-day government. Just like they have, SERAP has clearly stated here, I think that as at the time these funds were made available to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, one of those people that would, or one of the commissions that she would have worked with, so that to avoid any form of corruption or suspicion of corruption, would have been the EFCC and the ICPC. They will spell out exactly how it can be done in a very transparent way. I think one of the things that have made people not to trust this government is lack of transparency. How can you be telling Nigerians that the money that have been made available to you, you have withdrawn it from the bank, when we are even not supporting anything like using of money? We are looking at a case of cashless policy for our society. And this, it would have been an opportunity to make some of those people who do not have bank accounts to open bank account. Already she said that, I don't know how she arrived at that, she had 11 million people who are actually the poorest in the few states that they have visited. Now, how do we get to know the names? The only way to have known the names would have been if you had instructed these people on identifying them. You tell them, go open an account in a bank and bring the account number. From there, the transfers are being made, so that during the period of audit, there won't be any issue relating to, having to check this and check that. I think for those who have been working, SERAP is an NGO. For those who have worked in NGO, they know how they normally retire funds that are given to them for any form of program activity. You must clearly spell out everything, how it is done. If you are talking about that already you have spent this amount of money, you must come with clear documents that clearly shows that this is how the money was spent, so that you will be at rest. Anything that has to do with cash transfer must not be paid by hand, because anybody can doctor any number and put there and all of that. Cash transfers had always been the best. But these guys, by the time it was really amazing. In a cashless society like Nigeria, we saw a situation whereby the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Mrs. Farouk, we saw a snapshot of money placed on top of a table, and then you start giving it out. How effective would that be? How many people are you going to cover? Automatically, it's not going to be you doing the work, because you're going to employ many other persons who may not do the right thing as expected. And guess what? Most of the poor people will walk away there without that money. Very few will have opportunity of getting it. Some people will claim that, is it not a matter of writing names? All right, they'll just write any form of name, refuse to put phone numbers, because, being that they are the poorest in the society, most of them may not have phone numbers. And they will justify, why they couldn't get the phone numbers, or they put any kind of phone number, confused phone number, and before you know, they eat the money. For transparency's sake, it was monies were meant to be transferred. For me, even the issue of saying giving people rice, we'll use part of the money to buy rice, buy this and buy, it's uncalled for. Give them the money. They have peculiar needs. So you give them the money. So right now, I want to thank SERAP so much, because I know that whether they like it or not, they must vomit that money. It's really amazing that you see a country of this sort, and that the people are really not happy with the way things have been done. But still, every single opportunity that those who are in aim of affairs have is to keep on looting. I'm not saying the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs looted the money, but what I'm trying to say is there was no transparency at any level in the dispatch of that money into the hands of the people. There was nothing like transparency. We needed to see, number one, everything clearly spelled out. This is how much we have been able to receive. These are the people. You drop it on one of the national dailies. If you want to be transparent, if you want to say, I'm not corrupt, that's how to do things. Put it on one of the national dailies. Get 2 or 3, 4 pages of one national daily. Put their names there, so that people on seeing it, some people won't mind even picking up some numbers to call. Did you receive alert? Did you receive alert? That's how it ought to have been done. And so that during the period of audit, there won't be challenges. But look at how the whole thing, they galvanized, did it anyhow. And before we know, the money is almost gone. How would you tell me in a period of few days you are able to attend to 11 million people? Do you know what is called 11 million people? 11 million, 300 people, even for you to attend to 300 people by giving them money by hand. Do you know what it means? And automatically, such money is being that it was donation. As they are getting the money, they are supposed to write down their names and sign that they have collected, so their name, their phone number, their address, and sign, so that during the period of audit, it won't be difficult. During the period of retiring that money, it won't be difficult. But none of that was done. I'm just waiting to see what she's going to do at this point, because I know that SERAP has given her 7 days. If she doesn't do it, legal actions will be taken against her. Please, let's go to our comment section. Let's interact. Do you think that this is a way of checking the present day government based on